Good evening. This is John Warren, publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. I'm very excited to be joined in studio by Dr. Leonard J. Thompson III, our co-host, as he participates with us each week as we do this. I'd like to remind you that the Voice and Viewpoint is San Diego's oldest and only African-American publication, serving 89 zip codes, 17 cities, unincorporated areas of the county. And now online, you may also download our app in the Google or Apple Store, and we have expanded our reach. Our motto has always been, a people without a voice cannot be heard, and that we serve San Diego's African and African American communities. So this evening, Dr. Thompson, we're going to continue our stroll through Black history, looking at it in contrast to the many changes and crises that are confronting us. And we have an open mic approach. If you choose, you may call us at 858-251-6111, yes, or go to godradio1.com in terms of the internet. And we will welcome your questions or comments. And we thank you for joining us. Dr. Thompson.
Well, Dr. Warren, during the shortest month of the year, February, we celebrate African American History and Black History Month. And I think it's so important that we continue to think about where we have come from. And, they said if you don't know your history, you won't know your greatness. And so it's so important that we spend time educating one another and just going back over some things that we might have forgotten, over the years. Many times we bypass the struggles, we bypass the hardship, we bypass the sacrifices that people have made for us to have the freedom to have even a radio show as of this today, or have a newspaper, or to own property, or to even just be able to freely get up in the morning and make decisions on what we're going to do for the day. So it's just so very important that we take the time to celebrate this month. And again, I share with people all throughout the year, we get other people's history. All throughout the year, we are indoctrinated with the propaganda of the United States of America in the story that we call his story. But it is our duty as African Americans and people of color to continue to make sure that as you are learning his story, that you learn our history. And so tonight, as we delve into history, it is important that we take notes. It's important that we honor that there is a history beyond just a unilateral or monotheistic approach to what history looks like.
Well, you're absolutely right, Dr. Thompson, and both our institutions are very significant. I was thinking when I was listening to God Radio Sunday morning how many times over the past 40 years efforts were made to have gospel radio in San Diego, and how those efforts failed, and how at one point we used to talk about having 92.5, but we really didn't own the station. The late Willie Morrow leased that station from the Mexicans, and they took him to the cleaners in terms of what they charged him just to be on the air with the station. And so that was a tremendous thing. And now to hear that you can hear us on iHeart, and you can hear us on AM, FM, and people can tune in every day for hours of gospel. And that's 24 hours a day you have music. And, coming from back east, this was not uncommon. We had stations, we had gospel, we had music. And it's something that without the God radio, we wouldn't have in San Diego, and we didn't have for many years. Mm-hmm. And then I look at from the newspaper end, that we have a history of papers going back to the Lighthouse and all even before. And I think of when I came, Voice and Viewpoint was just doing Southeast, and it was a business model that operated out of some cards in a Rolodex sitting on the kitchen table, and it didn't go anyplace. It's the reliable business ads were tobacco and alcohol. And all of our papers, most of our papers in California had ads from Thrifty and Big Five because they basically robbed us in terms of the rates that they got us for before the internet came along. And so today I look back and I was coming in and I was listening to the fact that the San Diego Reader published its last print issue on the 13th of February, will now only be online after 50 years of publication. And I remember when the Reader didn't even come south of 8.
Yes.
And it was only in 7-Elevens and some stores, and people were on a waiting list to get it. At one point, it was up to like 200 pages in terms of advertisements, and it was such a desperate need to find print to dress the ads that articles from freelancers were commanding, a couple of $1,000s without any big concern about what they were doing, as they talked about how people lived here. And I saw them go through the change where at one point they bought and owned their own printing presses because printers went out of business, and printers have continued to shrink. And I've shared that in the years that we've been here, I've seen 13 publications go out of business. The Reader makes 13 or 14. We saw the Times Advocate in Escondido, Oceanside Breeze in Oceanside. We saw the Daily California in California. We saw the Pomerado papers go out of business. We saw the Star News in the South Bay. We saw the Vista Press go out of business. We saw the Union and Tribune consolidate. So in effect, the Tribune went away as the afternoon paper for the UT. And we've seen the skeleton of the Transcript left, which now can only be found in libraries or at their office, but they no longer have street distribution. They tried it, and their distribution never did equal what the Voice and Viewpoint did, because at our heights, we were at over 350 newsstands on the street in addition to the over-the-counter single copy outlets. And we still have those outlets today. And so we have thrived and we have grown. And as we shared at our gala, the fact that, we are in a digital transformation, but we have no desire to stop printing. But the significant thing is that of all the printing operations that were in San Diego, there are none left today. Today, we have to print our paper in Anaheim, and it's transported down to us every Thursday. And so the impact has been tremendous on print, and many large papers have gone through transitions and shut down after many years, some more than 100, depending on what communities, because of how people are getting their news. But those of us who adjust and remain flexible, we continue. So we will continue to print. We are expanding our availability online in terms of what we do and how we cover the community. And those things are important. And this is a part of a Black history in which the Black press is this year 198 years old, and it has been printing and publishing since 1827, when Rushworm said, nobody can tell our story but us.
Yeah. And one of the things, Dr. Warren, as we begin to look at transition and transformation, the way you survive in business is always being on the cutting edge and never get comfortable right where you're at, but you always are diversifying. And with the business model of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint, what I'm seeing is a consistent diversification. And here's the key. When things go awry, when things change, that is when most of the time we as African American people thrive, because we come with solutions and answers that turn to profitability. Before, though, when we came up with solutions and answers, people would steal, rob, patent our ideas and run away with it and make all the money. Now, because of understanding history and understanding diversification and changing and moving with the tide, we are now coming out the gate with our own patents and our own things. And so, even in the sense that there's no more printing presses that are printing here in San Diego, before that happened, you already had a game plan of where you were going to go next, and you made a negotiation for where you can go next to make sure that you still remain competitive.
God always plays a hand in that because 15 to 20 years ago, I was making every effort to acquire our own printing presses so that we could be self-sufficient. And I noticed that the UT is a good example. The UT had their presses out there in Mission Valley in that building, and Mansfield wanted that property. So when the time came, he bought the UT, and he bought all of those community papers going up the coast and consolidated them. Then he sold the whole package to L.A., to the Tribune Company, and they sold back to venture capitalists. And so I understand today the UT is somewhere in an office space, single office space that's really not much bigger than where we are.
Yeah.
In terms of going down from a building. The building is out there, but all around the building, that land has been used to build the apartments and the condos that Mansfield fought over a decade to get, the same way he fought to get control of the waterfront downtown, near the Star of India and getting those old Navy buildings. And there you see on Harbor Drive, you got a whole redevelopment, high rises, condos that, you probably can't even get in for $1 million on the ground floor. And so San Diego's shopping center downtown has been converted. It's going to be a miniature model, I understand, of Silicon Valley in terms of the Horton Plaza, with what's coming.
Well, I know that we're talking about African Heritage and Black History Month, but let's stop right there, because that has been one of the things that they're saying, that they're at their risk of losing that property now, that they have over something like $30 million in arrears, and if they don't pay it in the next 90 days, then that property reverts back to the city.
Well, that would be interesting because the city made all kinds of concessions. I remember I just come here when they were building Horton Plaza. They got tax breaks and they promised that they would hire local people. They never did hire us, as they said. They gave the illusion of doing it. And I remember when they opened Horton Plaza, they gave their marketing contract to some firm in Atlanta, Georgia. So they definitely weren't spending money with people here.
Yeah.
And Horton Plaza was also one of the reasons why the Martin Luther King Parade was moved off of Broadway, because they had problems in other major cities with parades afterwards, and they didn't want all those black people descending on that shopping center, which was supposed to be for the beautiful people. And so all that's gone now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that when we look at the history, downtown used to be a place that was very undesirable for anybody, and so you saw more African Americans and Latinos and living in the downtown areas. But then there was this big push to go outside, and so people that were living in La Jolla and had all that beautiful property and all that beautiful land was selling to come back into the city, not realizing that they were selling the gold mine, and now everybody wants to be outside the city. And so, in countries and in cities, you see schizophrenia that takes place. At one minute we want to be suburbs, the next minute we want to be city living. And, our city is really uniquely different in the sense that they're still trying to make San Diego downtown feel like New York.
Well, not only that, but history repeats itself. And last week there was a big fair housing conference here. I think they're 30 years or so of doing this. And what a lot of people don't understand, or maybe are not aware, that the white flight that led to the development of the suburbs was race-based in the first place, okay? Because when the schools desegregated, the white folks wanted to get out of the cities and get away from us. So, and the government was buying into it because the VA program had been developed following World War II and the Korean conflict, and the banks were engaged in strong redlining in addition to the restrictive covenants that said you couldn't sell property to Jews or black folks. And so the whole system was working against us. And yet, in spite of that, we have people here who were able to buy property. Some of them, I remember people telling me of a time when you could buy a new house in San Diego for $7,000.
Yeah.
And black folks didn't have that kind of money. They had to do payment plans and go about it in that way. And that's why we just did an ADU mini documentary it's on the internet about Encanto, showing all the places that they want to put those little granny additional units, changing the whole image of that community, giving it a density that in effect ghettoizes Southeast. And you can see that right off of Euclid, where they have stacked all of these apartments in 3 or 4 different places without concern for roads. At the same time that the apartments are being stacked, the streets are being narrowed with all kinds of midsections, and the public transportation is not keeping up with the urbanization of the community. Because if you're going to be like New York, then transit needs to be affluent and available. And when it's like that, then you don't have to worry about it. And so what happened is people in San Diego were given a chance 25, 30 years ago to buy homes in Temecula and move up there. And they gave them all kind of sweetheart deals because that was part of the urban removal plan. So they removed people that way. And then what happens throughout the country, we took over state legislature. And so blacks were able to get control and become mayors and council members, while whites were using algorithms to reprogram the state and to gerrymander the district so that no matter how many blacks moved into an area, that area could be subdivided in such a way that it would never have political strength. And I like to use San Diego's 4th district, which the Board of Supervisors district overlaps the city's councilmatic district. But what happened? Well, you had an abundance of blacks in Lemon Grove, and you had blacks moving into Spring Valley. But from a county standpoint, those numbers would never equal the whites that were in the rest of the district in terms of the rural areas that were gerrymandered and connected. And so we haven't paid close attention. There's still time for us to pay attention. And that's a good note to talk about where we are today, Dr. Thompson, because yesterday the mayor did his initial reorganization with budget cuts. One of the significant changes was the elimination of the chief operating officer, which was Eric Dargans, the African-American that they brought from Houston, Texas here. A consolidation, and rightfully so, taking a diversity, equity, and inclusion and placing them within HR where it should be in the first place. And so consolidating at the city and pulling things back into the mayor's control. And now he's going to operate as he should have been in the first place, as a strong mayor with a hands on his departments, heads, and his agencies and the people who have really been kind of running amok down there doing what they want. And these are significant changes. I'm still bothered by the fact that in the midst of trying to meet a $258 million budget deficit coming forward as we go forward, that the city of San Diego spent $3 to $4 million, I understand, trying to decide with a consultant how much they were going to charge for trash. And that's ridiculous, because they could have gone ahead and set a fee, and that money could have gone toward the deficit that we have.
And I agree with you 100%, Dr. Warren. And, I suggested a fee of $5 a week. $5 a month. And it was woefully rejected. And they're now saying that fee is going to be something like $58 to $60 per month, which it's traumatized us on fixed incomes that we have never had to pay for trash in the past. And so right now, I stand in vehement protest that I have to pay for trash after
Well, I just
almost
laugh
60
at
years.
I laugh
being
at
on
y'all
Earth.
talking about this because for my business, I've always had to pay for trash, and
Well, from a business perspective, we pay for trash.
but then residential. When I lived in county in the outside of the city limit in Bonita and Hamul, I paid for trash pickup,
Hmm.
and it cost me. And it was interesting when I was in Hamul. Not only did I pay $75 or $100 a month for one container in terms of trash pickup, but I paid for a second container that I used to contain the horse manure cleaning up behind my six horses out there in terms of keeping a clean environment. So you know the it's always been there. So many of us pay it, and it didn't have to be a fortune. It could have been $50 a month or whatever, like you said initially, just like they did the change in what the parking meter is downtown. All of a sudden, there's $2.50 an hour, and
Yeah.
then we could have saved. But San Diego has been spoiled, and a lot of money has been wasted here, and a lot of money has been wasted because the city, the residents were not properly educated as to what a strong mayor form of government actually meant. And I'm glad to see that the mayor is waking up, and I'm hoping that he will become the mayor that he should be in terms of control. Few people act like the mayor really has control of the police department. Police chief, he serves at the pleasure of the mayor. And there's a whole bunch of people that's serving at the pleasure of the mayor that have gotten comfortable with arguing with their employer,
Yeah.
which is crazy to me because either you do what the employer wants or you go find another place to work.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think that in this time, I always look at, and this is just how I have to look at things. I look at when you start making cuts, where you cut from first. You know what I'm saying? And I could agree or disagree with you on who you got rid of, but when I see that majority of the people that were gotten rid of were people of color, that concerns me because it goes in line with this whole Trump era. And I say that even with the mayor of New York. He had his back up against the wall, and
well, he didn't get any sympathy from me.
yeah. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
but he done made deals and everything else to cooperate with Donald Trump, and I'm like saying it's sad that people are finding ways through loopholes as long as they agree with somebody that's doing illegal stuff, and that's
Well,
just
they
really
might
sad.
find some loopholes, but I believe very strong that Donald Trump is an instrument of God's judgment on America, and I know that will sound far fetched to some people, but it's the only thing that makes sense
Hmm.
because if you look at Trump and you go back in the Bible and you look at, for instance, Nebuchadnezzar and how he took Israel and had the people captive and controlled the world, and the heathen was in charge until God decided that he had served his purpose. And so here's a man who's been impeached twice, indicted and convicted 34 times, shot at, almost killed once, just committed every crime you could think of in terms of corruption, bankruptcy, abuse of people, sex scandals, and the whole bit. And America still reaches out and grabs him the same way they grabbed Barabbas instead of Jesus,
Yeah.
because that was the way. It's we can see it looking back. If it had gone differently, we'd all be in trouble.
Hmm.
And so there's an instrument here because this country, with the celebration of abortions, with its principles primarily being founded as a godly nation, and then confusing that godliness and democracy with people's rights. And if LGBTQ is a lifestyle, then I always tell people God has always given folks the opportunity to choose what they wanted to choose. He lets you make a choice, whether you make it salvation or go in your own direction. But But choices have consequences, and we are responsible uh, with for what we do and what we decide to do.
Hmm.
And so I think this is a very golden time for many of us as a people. I know the black press is organizing in a very strong way. The community is asking the press, what do we do? Which way do we turn? How do we handle this? And people are losing jobs, and they're not just losing jobs, but the job losses threaten the very security of the country. And that's no accident because I remind people that history shows us that 20 some great civilizations in the history of man have collapsed from within. And we are going through that inward collapse. You know, in Rome, the Roman legions were drafted and they served for a period of 10 years. When I was coming along, we had a draft and we didn't have any choice in terms of our 2 years. Now we don't have a draft. The military has really broken down and disintegrated in so many ways. Uh, I was appalled at some of the changes that I find in terms of things. It used to be self-sufficient in terms of feeding its own, even though most of us ended up either as the cooks or the valets for the officers or the truck drivers or the infantry, giving warm bodies for the troops. And so all of these things have kind of gone away with people being submerged in choice and freedom to do what they want without responsibility or accountability. And I've shared so many times before, I think one of the most powerful uh, messages and lesson I ever learned was on a very rainy Sunday morning when I was in the Army in the field, and it was pouring rain, and I had to pour the water off my green eggs and coffee to eat.
Not green eggs and ham.
No, green eggs. And there was a chaplain that did a service while he stood in the back of a truck, and he talked about freedom, and he talked about how absolute freedom destroys. He talked about if you lift a tree up as big as it is, its roots from the ground, it dies, and that everything has to be anchored to something.
Hmm.
And so this nation was anchored to God, as our currency reflects. In God we trust, even though people seek to change those things. And I believe that we have to look back in terms of what we've experienced. I think it's Psalms 139 that talks about when the people went into captivity and how they hung their harps on the willow trees, and the captors demanded a song of them, and they were all homesick. Well, you know, we went through slavery, and we were broken away from families, and children were sold, and mothers and fathers, and men by people like Patrick Moynihan in the 60s, talking about the matriarchal society during the OEO program periods, made it look like all black men were irresponsible. But the reality was that there were no jobs for black men because of segregation and racism, and only by leaving the family was the family even able to get on welfare. And then when the women got on welfare with the kids, the welfare workers were so inhumane that they came around to their houses in the middle of the night to see if any men's shoes were in the house or under the bed. And we were always treated more harshly for everything, and yet we survived it, and we survived in spite of. So my message today to us is we will thrive in spite of whatever Trump does if we do a couple of basic things. And one of the most important things we could do is to return to 2 Chronicles 7:14, which says, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will they hear from heaven and I will heal the land. And that's a starting point. And now that we're at the beginning of the year and people are looking at fasting as a fashion show, because as soon as Fat Tuesday ends and Ash Wednesday, I know it's close, I don't know if we're here yet, the beginning of Lent, and we need to go back and read Isaiah 58. starting at verse 6. And he says, is this the fast that I've called for? And he talks about the benefit. We need to return to God, return to prayer, a return to prayer. And if we do these things, it's going to make a difference in terms of how we come through what we're going through. That, Dr. Thompson, I didn't mean to take so much there, but I was led to really make that part of our discussion.
Well, they say in the last days, perilous times will come, dangerous times will come. But again, God said, if my people, we have to realize that in this time, I want to come back to us as African-American people, and we have to realize where our strength lies. One, our strength lied in family. We learned how to survive on less. Now, I personally am not a person that eats chitlins. I like to talk about chitlins. I like to talk about cleaning them and the whole 9 yards, but I don't eat chitlins. But we would take the throwaways of what people did not want, and we then made them delicacies. And people were like, oh, have you had this? Have you had that? In Australia, believe it or not, ribs is considered dog food. They don't eat ribs because they consider that as dog food. And so we have learned how to take things that people threw away, and we made it into healthy ability for us to survive and to grow and to thrive. And so in this season, we must go back to what we learned in our ancestors. Now, I was very blessed to marry into an amazing family. Coming from an amazing family, married into an amazing family. But I'll call Grandma and Grandpa were such a great example. And me and my wife to this very day will say that we're trying to be like Grandma and Grandpa. Because, see, although Grandpa went into the military and he did not finish all of his schooling and everything else that nature, Grandpa was able to own 3-4 houses. He was able to help all his children get in houses. He had cars. And it seemed like they never, ever had a worry about money. Grandma was always very resourceful. And one day I was over there and I noticed that they had 2 freezers in the garage.
Yeah.
They had 2 refrigerators on the patio.
Yeah.
And a refrigerator in the main house. And their whole energy is that we will never go hungry.
Right.
They could shut down everything. We got at least 3-4 months worth of food stored up and ready to go. And you could literally go over to Grandma and Grandpa's house and say, "Oh, Grandma, I can't wait for Thanksgiving. I want some of that stuffing." She said, "Oh, go out to freezer number 3. And there's some stuffing still in there. It's been saved."
Yeah.
And we began to look at it. And one of the things that I loved about our grandparents is that Grandma would always have these purses full of change.
Yes.
And when my granddaughter was born, she used to tell her, "Go get one of those purses. I want to make sure you learn how to count money."
Right.
And she would pull this big old purse out, and she would dump the purse on the ground. And she started counting, and Grandma, that's right. Go get a jar or something from the kitchen and start putting it in as you're counting it. And then she would say, "Okay, that's for your piggy bank."
Yeah, and then you save, start your own saving.
Exactly.
And you know what is interesting is you tell those stories because when we were coming along, Dr. Thompson, and we didn't have television, in the evening after the workday, in the South, we sat out on the porch. Mm-hmm. And it was on the porch that people had conversation. So on the porch, the history was conveyed. And we sat there and we could see the stars because there weren't city lights. Mm-hmm. And the mosquitoes would come, but we had something for them too because they'd take an old bucket and put some rags in it and pour some sulfur in the bucket and light it and let it smoke. Mm. And the smoke from the sulfur would keep the mosquitoes away.
Wow. While
you sat there and did that. And so you talk about the things that you learn. I mean, I know to this day how to can. Mm-hmm. I know how to take vegetables and blanch them. And every time I'm in the grocery store, I see those bell jars because we bought those bell jars and we canned before the canneries opened. We canned it in the jars and sealed it, and we put the jars either under the bed or we put them in the cupboard if we had a place that we kept stuff, and there was always some pears, and I got a jar right near of green beans. When I moved to California, I had a freezer that I brought with me, and because a friend of mine and I, we used to go up into West Virginia every year, and we put it together and buy half of a steer, and they would cut it and package it, dress it for us, and we put it in there. And my cousin in the Carolinas, they got the 2 or 3 freezers, and all of them are still, like you say, they full of food. And when Thanksgiving came, we could reach under the bed and get a jar of the homemade wine along with the pear preserves and stuff. And so we didn't waste money like we do now. Okay, a lot of us today wouldn't know how to cook a biscuit from scratch if our life depended on it.
Well, you know, Dr. Warren, I just want to say to you that I always get very upset when someone says that, because I've tried to make some homemade biscuits. They just don't come out the way grandma's come out. Now, word on the street is that you got a good biscuit recipe, and that I think that you should pass it on down. I'll make the biscuits, and you can tell me if I pass the test. But you know, it's hard to find a good biscuit recipe.
It is hard, and you know, things have changed so, because in the old days they had the Crisco, can of Crisco lard, and you put that there, and you put some flour and some water. You knew how much salt to put in it, and you work with it, you know, and then you cut out those biscuits. The one thing I still can't cook to this day is homemade rolls, because I have problems getting the yeast to rise just right.
Yeah.
But I still have a freezer to make homemade ice cream. I have a recipe for it, and I know how to make it. And it takes a whole lot better than Thrifties and you know, what we buy in the store. Is,
Yeah.
so we just have opportunities to do so much, and yeah, prices are up, but that means we have to be wiser in terms of how we shop.
So I want to go there, but I want to say LaJean is on, and she said they used to do pickles. And,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. Now, this is the funny thing about being wiser how we shop, and maybe it's just me, Dr. Warren, and y'all have to help me with it. But they said, "Oh Lord, there's an egg crisis. Eggs is $8 a carton, $12 a carton," and they said, "How you dealing with it?" I said, "Oh, eggs went off the menu." You know, we replaced them with beans. You know what I'm saying? My thing is that because we're in a country that is very, very spoiled, we get upset when things are not there. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, not everybody had toilet paper, but they found a way to clean themselves. You know what I'm saying? So we have to realize that when people hold things up almost like gold, that this is going away, sometimes you need to let them have the gold and look at something different.
Well, you know, it was crazy during the pandemic, and I ain't figured this one out yet, why everybody rushed to buy all the toilet paper out the stores, off the shelf. You know, I mean, they didn't say diarrhea was going to be a main feature of COVID-19, but people did those kinds of crazy things. And, you know, one of the advantages of the paper, and we have in our archives issues going back in the 60s, and the food sales that used to come up every week. Okay, fascinating. When chickens were 29 cents a pound, a loaf of bread was 15 cents, you know, and you could buy, like, you know, they got a place on El Cajon called a pot pie shop. Well, the little pot pies they sell in there for $5, you used to be able to get 5 of those for $1.
Yep.
5 for $1, okay? And you could get canned goods, 5 cans of peas, 5 cans of corn, 5 for $1. If you spent $100, you had 2 cartloads with paper bags.
Yeah.
And so what did they do? I remember when they put in the barcode and plastic came. Now you walked out the store, and I went to the store to get some items. I got a little plastic bag and a $66 receipt. And I can carry it on a finger, you know, where did it go? And so we just have to change, because you don't find Popeyes or KFC in a white neighborhood. You don't find them. And I remember one of my first impressions when I moved east in the county was, oh, I'm not near a store. But then when you realize where you are, you don't run to the store for everything. you shop wisely in terms of what you bring in, and you plan ahead in terms of your meals and how you're going to eat. We need to go back to that. And if we do it, we'll probably go back to eating more together as a family, and we will save, and we will cut out all of this fast food insanity, which is unhealthy in the first place.
Well, Dr. Warren, in my transition into my maturity, one of the and I don't know if it was your daughter or my niece that introduced me to avocado toast. And I got hooked on avocado toast, and avocado started to be kind of hard to find, But I had a conversation, and I found out I had a friend that had an avocado tree. Man, I have avocado toast at a premium cost now because it doesn't cost me a thing to get avocados. So when everybody said the avocados are going to get tariff and everything else, I'm like saying, not so, because I have friends that have trees and things of that nature, and they said, oh, we got so much it's falling off. And see, here's the thing.
Yep.
We have to get out of the convenience of saying, oh, well, we want to do this, and make relationships and be willing to go and pick them.
We
and
become
clean them.
interdependent, and that works, okay? Because I have members that have orange trees, lemon trees. A few years ago, I had one member that had hens, and she would bring me eggs by the dozen, and we can control what we do and how. I enjoy taking the time to cook because I'm from the South and I like to eat. And the good thing about cooking today is if you think you're missing something in a recipe, you can get on the internet and find a variety of recipes, and you can modify according to what it is that you want to have. And so I know we didn't solve the problems of the world as we were talking here today, but sometimes we need to do like that song says, take me back to the old time ways and to the old home week. And we start helping each other in terms of what we do and how we raise things and what we farm and pick. There's still some farmers. And, our black farmers in this nation have suffered more than any other element in terms of racism and things that have been against them. And still, we thrive and we exist, even though many would have us wiped out and removed. Mm-hmm. And so as we move toward this next Friday, February 28th, non-spending day, economic fast day, where African Americans are being asked for 24 hours to not spend a dime on anything anywhere, and to look at what I call a SBC, a selective buying campaign aimed at corporate America. And the whole idea is...
Well, hold on, Dr. Warren. Okay, see, you love to throw out those nuggets, but we need to say that a little bit slower because everybody's saying don't buy, don't purchase, but you done gave it an acronym. And so let's go back and slow that down so that people will start using it so that we'll be on the same page.
Well, I call it the SBC. Mm-hmm. And because we don't need to use terms like boycott and all that foolishness. But the SBC is a selective buying campaign. And we get educated to how we shop and where we shop. A case in point, we know that Target was going for the removal of DEI
programs
and the whole and things. And I understand that many shareholders came down on them because the black items being removed from the store were impacting the bottom line. Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly what I have in mind when I mention the SBC, selective buying, because let's look at who owns what. You can mm-hmm. Google it. Target owns Marshall, and they own a couple of other entities. Mm-hmm. Okay, Walmart. We live in Walmart, but Walmart, in spite of the early days of the family and some outreach efforts to people and folks who do get jobs, especially in a number of our stores in the South where their superstores have canceled out the smaller markets that many people shopped at, mm-hmm. we can engage in selective spending with Walmart. We don't have to buy everything. If you have to go there, then you can just make sure that it wasn't available someplace else. Mm-hmm. But we check to see what's available. Mm-hmm. No, we don't have a lot of stores that we own, but we have choices in terms of where we go And we need to discipline ourselves and get beyond convenience to the things that make sense. Now, if we do this, it's going to have an impact. Uh, Elon Musk is running rampant, and he's got the space contract and Tesla and everything. But guess what? Unless I read it wrong, about 2 weeks ago, uh, his holdings, his billionaire status holdings, shrunk from $358 billion to 42. He had a 63% loss in income in terms of stocks because people start selling what he made, shunning whatever his name was on. And when the dollar is pulled back, you get America's attention. Because I'm going to keep saying this, my three elements that corporate America understands: lost profits, bad publicity, and votes cast against their interests. And we can affect their profits, even though our dollars might not seem much. You need to know that there are 10 major nations in the world with a GNP that's up there, and Black America would be number 11 if we were a nation because we spend $2 trillion a year without any disciplined control over where and how we spend it. So let's start looking at what we're buying. I remember we were doing some surveys in the media industry a few years ago, and we were buying more potato chips, toilet paper, and butter than anybody else because of our undisciplined lifestyle. Cigarettes at $12 and $15 a pack, that's not a necessity.
Well, yes, and cigarettes have never been a necessity for me, nor alcohol or any of the other things. I think, though, that many times we buy into what society says is cool or not cool, and we always find ourselves trying to keep up with the Joneses. Now, I will say, growing up and before I got totally educated and everything, in the 80s and the 90s, those Jordache jeans and Guess jeans and the Vidal Sassoon, everybody wanted name brand jeans. Don't you come to school with just some plain old 501 jeans, you get talked about.
Yeah, you were embarrassed,
And the thing about it was that we bought into the marketing campaign that was geared towards us. Now, Tommy Hilfiger was who woke me up when he got on TV and said he never wanted Black people to wear his clothing. And when he said that, people started turning all their Tommy Hilfiger in and stopped using it. And his market product went way down because now the Black people, when they were told that he didn't want them to wear their clothes, they said, "Oh, you feel that way? So we will just, in a roundabout way, bankrupt you." We have to stop buying into trends and have to realize that we are the trendsetters, i.e., Dr. Warren, have you ever had when you were growing up, have a pair of jeans with a hole in it?
Yeah, we did.
And did you ever put patches on it?
Sure, we used to buy those iron-on patches.
Yeah.
You could put it.
And here's the thing, we did that out of necessity so we have longer wearing time. Now they go in and they rip the jeans and they done took what was a necessity. Now they done sold those jeans now for $200 and they call them distressed.
Well, I told you last week on the program when we mentioned jeans that the way they started making those jeans was they would go down in the basement and hang them up against a tin wall, and somebody would take some buckshots and get a shotgun and shoot holes in them.
Yeah.
And then they take them back upstairs and sell them.
Yeah.
And so these are, we can control. Yeah, when I was coming up, the polyester clothes, Tom McCann shoes, the kids who had money, they laughed at you in terms of it. But it's not what's on you, it's what's in you that counts.
And it's also how you rock it. Because, see, you can't tell me what Michael Jackson with his penny loafers and his high water pants, and everybody all of a sudden now coming in with a high water pants. They have high water pants to this day, this so that they can show the socks. Yeah. And so the thing about it, we have high water pants because we had outgrown them and we had started getting taller and they were high waters and we was embarrassed. But then when people start making it a fashion, they start rolling those jeans up. We used to get in my neighborhood, when the jeans got too short and everything, we cut them off and turn them into shorts.
Yeah.
And then we would wear, and here's the funny, we would wear them through the summer, and now your thighs is bigger because you done got bigger. So then you would cut slits on the side,
right,
so that you still had the shorts on. And everybody thought it was the coolest thing in the world because we made it cool.
Yeah, because what we did, we were content to do, and we set the trend as opposed to following. We need to go back to examining how we spend all our money, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah.
And when we do that, uh, let's look at where we shop. Okay, let's not just go to the same store all the time because that's where we're. Let's use some selective buying. I like to give an example of that. If you see a sale that says um, 10 items for $1, if you go to the store and just buy those 10 items, you might get a bargain. But if you go and buy those 10 items, 10 packets of corn for $1, and you keep shopping, before you leave, the money you thought you saved, the difference has been spread around other items in the store, and so you're not saving. And so you have to start being, never go shopping when you're hungry. Make a list in terms of what you're going to do. There's still coupons that are available. I have a staff member who she masters the coupon thing so online, and she knocks $100 or $200 off her grocery list every time she goes shopping because she's preparing. And see, most people don't realize that the food sales used to start on a Thursday to catch people in conjunction of when they got paid. And that's why papers start printing coupons on Thursdays and Fridays, and people start stealing those papers to make money on that. So we need to understand why things were the way. Now they're doing digital coupons because only a few people are using them, and they're making money off the ones that don't.
Yeah. Now, here's the one thing about it is that in all cultural groups, you can learn from people. You know, I want to shout out to my Latino brothers and sisters because, again, through the pandemic and through all the rough things that happened, if you all can just tell me one taco shop that actually shut down.
Never.
You know what I'm saying? What is it? The tortillerias are still growing.
The only shutdown we had a month or so ago was Las Cuatro Milpas because of that health inspection issue and taxes. And within 2 weeks, they've opened back up and cured their problems. And because they spend money with themselves.
Yeah, and we spend money with them. And the thing about it is that they have good product.
Yes.
And so the bottom line is, if you have good product, people will come. If you, like I said, I'm just honest. You know, not everybody can make a good bean burrito.
No.
But it's hard to mess up a bean burrito. So if you go there, you get a bean burrito, and there's a couple of top shops. You get a bean burrito, you cut that thing 4 ways, and you can feed the whole family almost. You know, but I say that because we have that same skill set. We used to do the exact same thing. My mother, bless her heart, could take a pound of ground round and make it last all week long.
Yeah.
And we all were getting different meals every day off a pound of ground round. Didn't know how she did it, how she stretched it.
Well,
but
that's
she
why they
it
made
work.
Hamburger Helper.
Yeah.
To add to that.
My mama said that was too expensive.
Yeah.
She could help herself.
Yeah, she could do it on her own.
Yeah.
See, and you know, with shopping, like we have the Mexican food stores like Northgate and Gonzales, and they have like the Super 8 store that's in National City. They have one of the greatest fresh meat selections you want to find. And you're going to find more people there buying, and they'll do English for you if you need English. You can get a ticket and follow in English. And you'll find all those stores are stocked even better than a Food for Less because people are shopping among themselves, but you have to know which items to buy.
Exactly.
You make a list of it because one thing is going to be expensive in one store, is going to be different in another.
Yeah.
And when we were coming along, Leonard, they had home economics as a class in school.
Took it.
Yeah, told you how to cook and shop and clean and do.
How to sew.
Yeah, so because I grew up knowing how to crochet, sew, iron, wash, the whole bit, and it was just reflex. I didn't have to get somebody to don a sock or put a patch on some pants or something like that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is that my mother used to always say to me, and this is where we're trying to sow into our young people now. She said that I want you to be totally self-sufficient.
There
I
you
don't
go.
ever want you to have a wife or a woman
That
to
you
do
got
the
to depend
things
on.
that I want you to be able to cook. I want you to be able to clean. I want you to be able to sew. I want you to be able to do it all. And I used to always ask my mom, well, why don't my sister got to get out there and cut the grass?
Yeah.
She said that's a man's job.
Yeah.
But the thing about it was, but my sister was yet very resourceful. She didn't have to do it, but if she had to do it, she would do it because she saw my mother. My mother was out there cutting the grass because she said she was happy to have a lawn, and she was out there cutting the grass. I said, "Mama, I could do it. I could do it." Now, when you're young and you're a kid, cutting the grass with a lawnmower is fun when you first start, but as you get older, it becomes work.
Yeah, well, I mean, now you got these power lawnmowers. When I came along, it was a push mower.
Yeah.
And it took a whole lot more to cut it. It was the labor if you were cutting grass. You were tired when you finished, okay?
Yeah.
So anyhow, today we walked through a whole bunch of things, folks. We didn't try to solve all of the problems of the current scenario, but sometimes in the midst of what seems to be a crisis and trouble, you need to stop and reflect and remember and look at how we go forward. We don't need the Department of Education because we educated ourselves. Every church ought to be building a library and a bookstore. Every church ought to have some volunteer retired teachers that want to come in and do classes and teach young people and adults alike, if you will, to be sufficient and to make things work. All of us have things that we don't use that we can share. And don't give nobody dirty stuff. If you're going to give something, clean it up and package it and give it to them. And so we were intended to be givers. The word says the Lord loves a cheerful giver. And we're not supposed to be ripped off, but we're supposed to be conscious of the concern that we don't live alone and we're done. And we will rest better. We will feel better. We will be healthier if we do these things, okay? And just like the fasting that's mentioned in Isaiah 58, and you get down to it, he talks about how your health will break forth like the noonday and burdens will be lifted and things that you worry about. Our foreparents certainly had more to worry about. They didn't have the jobs and the plans, and grandma had that guy coming every week for that nickel policy. But then by the time they died, that nickel policy is what buried them when we didn't have the money for it. And so we can do a lot today if we just stop and talk to each other. In line with that, I want to invite you to come back, if you haven't, to Black Men and Women United on Tuesday morning. You can call the voice and get on our email address, and it's an open, safe space. You are a member by birth if you're African American or Black. And it's not a racist group because we invite people on from different communities at different times. But the important thing is that it's a place where we can talk and fellowship and see how we can help each other.
Yeah, and I'd like to end off with this and talk about mentorship and looking ahead and then also looking behind. You know, I've always publicly said to you, Dr. Warren, that a lot of things that I do, I pattern after you and Mrs. Warren, Miss Jerry Warren, because you guys were the power couple in our city that created Black excellence in the day. And the more that I watched how you and Jerry operate around each other, I laugh because you and I have a lot of tendencies together, and we come in fussing, or we might say certain things, but then our wives will come in and says, now, we're not going to do it that way. And they would always make sure that there was a balance in how we went about it. And so what I encourage young people today is to find people that are before you and then people that are after you. I look at some of these young couples today, and I try to reach out to them and let them know, you know, these are some of the times that you have to look at what you need to work on, and then there's times that we reach back and we learn from each other. But I always want you to have something in front of you and on back of you. That's how we learned as a culture. We had our grandparents, and then we had our colleagues, and then we were able to look down at the young people and learn from them as well as we taught them. So on behalf of all of us that have reaped the benefits of your marriage and your business acumen, we want to thank you during Black History Month for continuing the efforts that go forth.
Well, it continues because my present wife, Dolores, has very strong historical roots. As you know, she has a foundation in Patterson as a testimony to her great grandfather, who was a black abolitionist and helped the slaves, runaway slaves, going north at great risk to their own lives and safety. And so we continue to do the things that you're talking about because the struggle continues. And we are always here to help others because we've been helped. And so I want to thank you for this time. I want to thank those of you who are listening for taking the time out of whatever you were doing to listen and be a part of our conversation. And maybe something we've said is of some help to you. We always welcome hearing from you. We might not be able to talk to you immediately the way you want to, but we value communication at this point because we're still on the planet for a reason and for a purpose. And so we're very thankful for that.
And with that being said, we want to say thank you for listening to the Desk of the Editor. Again, tune in every Wednesday. We're here talking about pertinent issues, and we want you to continue to tap into GOD Radio 1, download your app, tap into the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint, download the app, and realize, go to the website for both entities and join our newsletter, join where you can get emails consistently throughout the week and get news bites and things that are happening in our community. And then for all of you all, the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint now has a community calendar page that you're able to share things that are taking place in the community. And again, we are worldwide. And so we're not just being listened to just in the city of San Diego, but around the world. So tap in, learn more about each other, and share, and we will work together. Until next week, this is from the Desk of the Editor with Dr. John Warren. Hope to see you soon.